Hey everyone, it's Christopher Swan, and welcome to this week's episode of Living Your Journey. Each week, I have this amazing opportunity to chat with people that love what they do in life. They understand their passions and their direction. Maybe it's a career path, or it's the social impact that they're making. It's kind of like they're following their North Star. They also know their story may change, and they understand that they're on their journey every day. This week, musician Janet Robin joins me on the show. Now, Janet's a guitarist, a singer, and a songwriter. But regarding guitar, she's more than just good. She's amazing. And it makes sense. As a child, she was taught by the famous heavy metal guitarist Randy Rhoads. For anyone who knows who that is, you know that's a big deal. Janet and I talk about it all, the experiences of building a career from an all-female rock band to working and learning from people like Lindsey Buckingham of Fleetwood Mac to a longtime solo career to her latest work and working with the legendary John Carter Cash. We of course cover the world of music and the behind-the-scenes details, but we also talk about starting out and surviving as a musician. And for the non-musicians, the advice can apply to any dream or any career. I've admired Janet's music and career for a long time, so the opportunity to chat with her about her career was amazing. But even better was the live performance she gave at the end of our conversation. Oh my gosh, it was so good. So stick around to the end to hear Janet grab her guitar and jam. I was blown away. Everyone, meet Janet Robin. Janet Robin, it is so great to have you on the show today. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Christopher.
So we were just talking about this, but I'm going to set this up a little bit just because I think it'll be fun for the people that have followed along and know me. So I've been following your career for years now, and I've been a fan of yours for your music and also your style, just kind of what you do with your music and also how you present it.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So, I just told you too, where I just first discovered you, it was a place in Studio City, the now defunct Lulu's Beehive coffee shop.
Oh yeah, that was back in the early days of me going solo, I guess you could say, after I was was a hired musician for several years.
Yeah, that's what I even thought too. Well, I don't think I knew this then, that was kind of your beginning, but as I followed along, I could see it was.
Yeah.
But I remember it was happenstance. We happened to stop by and they were having, some music that night. So I started to think about this as I prepared for just the conversation today, you've come a long way from playing a little coffee shop in the late 90s.
Yeah, that's true. I think I have. And I think that was, thank you for that compliment. And I take it as a compliment.
Absolutely.
Think, I saw myself in further places than the coffee shop, but I knew that, I had to get that experience being out there on my own, for myself. So that was start back then. Everybody was doing it, kind of following the path of someone like, say, Ani DeFranco, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
She was an inspiration to me. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to go for it. Just going to jump in.
That's actually so great though too, because there's so many people I've talked to through these shows that they're like, you have to start, just jump in. It doesn't matter what you're doing, just do it.
It's pretty much the thing. Yeah. And luckily, back when you're talking about the late 90s, there was that big resurgence of coffee houses, and then they started having music, and, you didn't have to play covers. You could play your own original songs. And that was one of the places that I frequented, and I used to live in that area. So it was close and, sort of cutting my teeth playing those venues.
Yeah, that makes sense. So here's the thing. I'm not going to do a traditional, let's go through your career yet. I do want to go backwards a little bit. I definitely, there's some things in your past that I just think are super fascinating I want to talk about. But I know, we chatted through this through email, but I knew long too, because I've been listening to your stuff online too. But you have 2 new albums out. You have one through your solo career, Take Me As I Am, and then you have another one, and a guitar instrumental through the band. I think that I want to say that you started it, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I did. Yeah,
great.
I did.
Okay.
Start. Yeah, the String Revolution.
Right, and so that's Stringborn. So maybe I'd love to start there. Tell me about this these two new albums, because they're really two different spaces. I know the history a little bit of Take Me As I Am, but I'd love you to tell us about, just where you recorded it and the journey with it.
Well, it was kind of a pivotal year for me because I turned 50, Christopher. And I think over the past year, I had been doing a lot of reflection. There have been different changes in my life. And, my parents, I see them getting older and older. My dad, has a little bit of dementia, and that's been difficult on all of us. And I think you just reach an age, where you just, you kind of accept yourself, your good parts and your bad parts. You can keep trying to work on your bad parts, but, you just come to this point in your life where, you know what, this is who I am. And I think also you stop caring more about what people think about you. You just, when you're older, you're just like, I really don't care anymore what you say or what you think or whatever.
It's it's really a gift.
I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just saying, and I'm certainly open to critique. It just is sort of, a mindset that you get in. I think you start taking things a little less personal. And I do think, the older you get, the wiser you are. I mean, I totally think, that holds true now. And a lot of those things were going through my mind when I was doing writing for Take Me As I Am over the past year. And henceforth the title, Take Me As I Am, which is also the title track. Sure. There's a song called Take Me As I Am. My life is settled. I have a partner. I'm married and thank God my parents are still with us. I'm spending a lot more time with them. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to see, there are lots of things important in one's life than only a career. And I was on that path for a very long time. I still am, don't get me wrong. It's still there for me. But, there are a lot of other important things like your family and people that support you and love you that, I really am paying a lot closer attention to. So that came out in some of my writing. And, I always have the occasional sarcastic, cynical song on my records just because, just because I can.
Yeah.
And, there's a general theme over that record, but it is somewhat eclectic. And, I threw in one guitar instrumental just in my particular style. And I did it with John Carter Cash, Johnny and June's son, because he did my last studio CD. And I loved working with him so much, I wanted to do it again. And actually, it was with John Carter and Chuck Turner, one of his partners who works at Cash Cabin Studios. And they both did it, with John being sort of the executive producer this time, and Chuck and I working on the guts of the production, and then John and Chuck overseeing the mixing. So it was a little bit more collaborative this time. And we did it again at Cash Cabin, which is this amazing studio down in Nashville that Johnny, it used to be his hunting cabin, and then he turned it into like his writing cabin. And then later on, it was turned into a regular, recording studio. But it is not open to the public. It's private only. And, you kind of have to be invited to do any work there.
How did that come to be? Because I know, like you said, you recorded your previous album there as well. How did that come to be that you were recording there? Because it's just a great space.
Yeah, a story of my life about jumping into things, which I think I actually got from my dad. Go for it. That was before Nike started using it. Whatever, just do it, right?
Right.
It's a funny story. I was at a friend's house many, many years ago, rewatching Walk the Line. And my friend, I've been to many of my shows, and she was like, hey, you should cover a Johnny Cash song. That would be super cool, and blah, blah, blah. And so I got kind of inspired, and I just started looking up, online things about Johnny and his family. And I was very curious to know, I knew he had Roseanne Cash and he had other kids, but I didn't know if Johnny and June, had any children together because, they both left their partners and then, got married. So it turned out that they did. They had one son, who's John Carter. And in my research that particular night, I did everything in one night. It was like I found out he was a record producer in Nashville. He worked out of that studio. He was very involved in his dad's final recording, the American recordings, where he covered Hurt and all these, cool songs, and Rick Rubin produced it. And your listeners may not know who that is, but the point is that he was very instrumental in that last record.
Yeah.
And I saw in my search that there was a YouTube video of him speaking about working with different artists since and his production style. And I was so impressed with his interview on that YouTube video. He was talking about, how he grew up with this country music royalty. But, as he became a teenager and into his 20s, he really got into like hard rock music,
It's like rebellion.
Heavy rock and roll, and, moved to LA and was going to see all the bands on Sunset Strip and all that. And, now, it's come full circle and he's just mixing and matching a lot of different styles that he's grown up with. And he had said that he, recently been working with a lot of singer-songwriters. And I was just like, hey, that's me. I come from like hard rock kind of thing, Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, whatever, and I'm doing a little bit more of a singer-songwriter thing, but incorporating that, that aggressive guitar, even in my acoustic playing. And I thought, I think he's going to be perfect for me. I got to find him.
Yeah.
So I found him online. Back then, it was a MySpace page for...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now we're going way back. It was a MySpace page for Cash Cabin. I sent a message thinking, that the receptionist or whatever would get back to me. I just told him who I was, who I had worked with, a little brief summary of my career. And I sent him, I put my website in there. And I just said, I really am, would love to work with you on my next project, my next record. And 2 weeks went by. It was Christmas time, so I didn't expect that much. But I didn't know what I expected. I just, I threw it against the wall. So, he ended up personally emailing me from his personal email and just saying how impressed he was with my music and my background. And he thought we were very similar. In that sense, in that regard.
Sure.
And, that he would love to work with
me. And yeah, that's kind of amazing. You reach out there and it even happens.
Sometimes things just happen. And then other times you make things happen. But I don't know if I really believe in things just happening on their own. There is that definition of good luck, which to me means, preparation meets opportunity.
Right. Yep.
And, I was ready at that time to work with somebody like that. I had no idea how I was going to pay for it. So that's a whole other story. And I can get into it if you want.
Well, before we do that too, because I do think that's interesting, but what I just started to think through a lot of this was, it resonates with, and I don't know if this is really true. I just know your background enough to know that you've worked with a lot of amazing people. So it makes me want to ask you, is that is this just part of your personality of being out there, preparing, just doing it, going for it? Because you have worked with these different artists or, even just not just artists, but I think even people from like K-rock to, to whatever. Just, I'm wondering if like that is a little bit of part of your magic though, is like, you can't wait for it to happen. You have to go out there and make it happen.
I think it's really a combination of both. And I think it starts very young, not to say that you can't do it later in your life, but I was lucky with my parents because they, installed a lot of self-esteem into me, and playing guitar at such a young age gave me something, to make me feel good about myself. Now, I do want to, reiterate, you can do it later in life. And I teach guitar when I'm not on the road, and I have several adult students, and I've seen them just commit to their lessons, and, they'll be playing a show at a venue, in a couple months. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So that just goes to show you, yeah, you can do it later in life. But if you're talking about my own personal journey, it started early with me, with my parents allowing me to be the person I was. I think I was in competition with my older brothers. I was the only girl and the youngest in the family. So I just had a little bit of fire in me, and I worked hard at it. And I think also, when you work hard at whatever it is, there's always a payoff. There's always a payoff. And it may not be, you, in my case, a big, famous, rich rock star, but, I've gotten kind of what I wanted. I'm making a living as a musician.
Well,
So-
that's a great point too, because it, like you just said, this like giant famous rock star. Yeah, maybe when we're 15, that's what maybe our idea of success is. But like, my question is like, yeah, what was your goal, and or has that changed? Like, is that goal different now that you've had? Maybe it's about experiences.
I think, that goal of fame and fortune was like a dream or something that you have when you're younger. And, I got to experience a little bit of it on a smaller level. But I also got to be around it in playing with some of these artists that, you mentioned later, very famous people, and seeing how it is for them. There's so many things I think that shape a person into who they are in regards of, their choice of career and how they approach things in their life. And I got very lucky, like I said, early on with my parents the way they were, with my guitar teacher, who was a man named Randy Rhoads. Guitar players might know who he is. He played in Ozzy Osbourne's band and responsible for Ozzy's famous hit "Crazy Train." And unfortunately, he died in a tragic plane accident. But he was very, instrumental in my guitar playing and my study of guitar, because he really didn't give a, what, can I use the S word or no?
Sure.
He really didn't give a shit that I was a girl playing rock guitar at 9.
At 9?
At 9.
I was not visualizing you at 9 doing this with
9.
Randy Rhoads.
I started guitar at 6, classical and folk. And then when my brother started taking electric guitar lessons, of course, I had to do exactly what he did.
That's awesome. I love that, Janet.
Yeah, I begged, borrowed, and stealed to get, an electric guitar, to get my parents to get me one. And, we got one, and I took some lessons. I started with Randy, and, he was just all about, work hard, practice, listen to what I'm saying. And that just really, started my journey. I mean, it really did. I had very good confidence in my playing, and that, I'm a good person. I'm always trying to come from a good place. But I was, determined to get in bands, to be a very good guitar player. I mean, as good as my teacher, if that was even possible. Mm-hmm. I mean, my parents took me to gigs of his. He used to be in Quiet Riot, which later became big. At the time, before he got into Ozzy's band, he was in that band Quiet Riot, and they were a big band in Los Angeles. And I was literally like 11 years old going to these like hardcore rock clubs with my parents. Guitar teacher.
Did your parents enjoy this stuff, or were they also doing it because they could see the passion from you?
I think that they just did it for me.
Okay.
Randy happened to be a very sweet guy, and he, wasn't into drugs and all that crazy stuff that was going on. But I was so impassioned about taking lessons from him, and because he really was, he's one of the world's best guitar players, really in the entire world. And he influenced so many different guitar players. And he was very special, and very special to see live. And I was so young watching him on stage. I was just like, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to be that,
Wow.
I think I also had a little bit of natural performance talents.
Sure.
And, you know, wanting the attention all the time. You know, you come from a family like mine where you have two older brothers and, you know, everybody's loud talking over each other. It's like, hey, me, you know.
It's actually the perfect thing to have those two older brothers.
It was, yeah. And now my other brother who played guitar, he's now a dentist, followed in the footsteps of my father. And the other brother, the oldest one, left the country to get into computer marketing. So there you have it.
So different. That's funny. Hey, I want to, because I don't really want to go down this path of some of your past too, but before I skip it too long, because I don't want to forget it, I'd love to go back to that second album you just released too. Stringborn, because, you know, I didn't quite realize that was the one I was like, oh, wait, what? It's a separate thing? And so when I listened to it, I was like, wait, you guys did Billie Jean?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is awesome. So maybe tell me a little bit about how even the String Revolution came to be and what's this album about?
So I'm, you know, in working with a particular artist named Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac, we had a very special band that he put together. It was 5 guitar players, 2 percussion players, a drummer, bass player, and a keyboard player. So it was like an orchestra, you know. And he wanted to create these layered sounds, basically of what he'd gotten on his solo record that he was putting out that particular year, which was called Out of the Cradle. And it was the first time he had ever assembled a band for one of his own solo records. And he wasn't in Fleetwood Mac at that time. You know, he had left and he was just spending a lot of time working on this record. And I got so inspired by being in that gig, you know, seeing how the layers of the guitars work together and within the arrangements. And I just, you know, always wanted to do something similar to that. You know, of course, I went on into doing my own solo stuff. And actually, Lindsey, you know, kind of mentored me into that world as well. As I got more established with my solo stuff, I started I had a yearning for something a little different, which happens, I think, with a lot of artists. You know, you're always looking, you know, kind of like, well, how can I change things up? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I got this idea and was like, you know, I'd been listening to a lot of instrumental guitarists and people like Tommy Emmanuel and, you know, Peppino Agostino and all these amazing players. And I thought, I want to put together a group of instrumental guitarists where we can make sounds on our guitars that resemble a live band without, you know, having drums and bass. And I would like to do it mostly instrumental. Now, this record does feature one song where we have a guest vocalist, but the rest of the record is all instrumental. So I just, you know, like any normal person, I put an ad in Craigslist.
Like any normal person.
I have gotten very lucky with Craigslist, and the reason I actually had a reason behind it, because I, of course, know many, many fabulous guitar players, but I didn't want to work with anybody I knew. I just wanted completely new people, and that I also got from Lindsey too. When he put his band together, he could add a pick of the litter, but he literally wanted to work with people he didn't know.
I get that. It brings in a new energy and new collaboration and new ideas that he didn't think of.
Yeah, and he wanted, you know, he had a vision. He wanted 2 guys and 2 girls, not only for, you know, the visual thing, but actually because he wanted in the background singing, he wanted, you know, male and female voice.
Okay.
And you know, he just said, I might as well have them play guitar too, you know. So, you know, anyway, so I put an ad in Craigslist. I was very specific about the ad. And, you know, it really didn't take very long. I think it was literally like a day or two to where I got a couple submissions from people. You know, a few weren't really what I was looking for, but I found 2 people very fast. And then one guy ended up having a friend that he thought would be really great for this project. And it was literally put together within a week.
Wow.
So, you know, we're talking now 2 years ago. And we're all busy with other music projects. So, we slowly built our repertoire. We did writing, it's all collaborative. It's not Janet Robin and the String Revolution. It's just the String Revolution together. It's a democratic, situation. Everybody has an equal voice, and we all collaborate equally on all the songs. And, we finally put the set together, and we had a couple shows. It was just, getting such good response. It was time to make a record. And again, I threw stuff against the wall because when we finally did the recording, we finished the recording on our own. We got some favors for studio time. Now was the mixing process, and if people know anything about making a record, that's a really important process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it
is.
It's like editing a film, So we weren't getting the mixes we wanted from different people we were working with. I mean, it was good, they were cool, but we was missing something. So we just went to, who we loved so much, Rodrigo and Gabriela, who are fantastic instrumental guitarists, but are aggressive and percussive, and they have this big fat sound. And I just wrote the guy on Facebook who mixed their record. It wasn't MySpace. I had to do it on Facebook this time.
The modern era.
So I found him, Matthew Hyde, and he lives in London, and I just put it out there. And, once again, he went to the website, and he really loved, what we had so far. And, I think he knew we wouldn't be able to afford his, full rate. He cut us a little bit of a deal, which was so cool because I don't think we could have been able to do it. And he really wanted to mix the record. So
I think that's so smart. I know we laugh a little bit about the MySpace and Facebook, but
yeah,
I can even speak from my end. There have been guests I've on the show that I've worked very much the same way. Even connecting to you was, I follow you on Facebook and Twitter and different spaces, and I went to your website, found your email address, and I cold emailed you. So I think if there's a great message there too, is like, just take the chance. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, it's how you approach it too. I mean, you don't want to look opportunistic.
No.
You don't want to be pushy, but you have to ask for things if you want something done. And, there's no harm in trying. And for the, thousands and thousands of emails I've sent out for various things in my career, I don't care if I get only one answer back, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll just keep sitting there and sending out the emails until I get that answer.
I agree. And you don't know where that's going. I think even to that good example of, obviously to your String Revolution, to your work with Lindsey Buckingham, I mean, you just don't know where things are going to go. And I don't know, knowing a little bit of your backstory and the folks that you've worked with, I think that's so interesting that, it from somebody who doesn't know, and I act like I'm your bestie, but like
oh, you are, Christopher.
Really?
You're my third brother.
Practically. So yeah, I just think like when people think, it's a little bit of magic, actually it's not. You got to keep trying.
That I totally agree with you. Like I said, there is no such thing as good luck, or luck. You have to make it happen. And, if you're pushing a little too hard, then that's not good either. You can't overdo something. And you should be smart about and maybe realistic about what you're going after.
Yes, that's entirely true.
Right. I mean, if you want to be in the Olympics, you can't just, go, start off with a couple of gym classes.
Yeah, you might want to practice for a while. And that's the beauty too, because you've been doing this for a long time. So, this isn't overnight success at all, and you've had a career of, the stuff that you want to do, but that's also speaks to these individuals you've spoken with or have asked, hey, would you mix this? They could go to your website, they could hear your albums, hear your music, hear the things that you're doing. So I think there's proof in that.
And that has helped for sure with my credibility, and having some of those gigs and people that I worked with, that has helped as well. But even getting those gigs was just the nugget of it before getting the gigs again was just really believing in yourself, in your work, having confidence, and being ready for a gig like that, or being ready for a record to record with this kind of person, or, there's all this preparation that you have to do. You can't, I tell my students that all the time. I'm like, wait a minute. You can't go so fast right now on that riff. You got to slow it down a little bit, learn the riff, and then, speed it up as you go along. I mean, that my dad always told me, listen, Janet, it's always better to be the turtle, than the hare.
I like that, actually. Yeah, it's true. Take your time, learn it, understand it.
Things may come slower, but they'll come the right way. And maybe they won't be exactly what you wanted, but again, you'll have other things that you'll get out of doing things the right way.
It's true. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what the future is going to hold. I think there's a piece to that formula of this being prepared thing that I'd love to ask you about, because I've been really curious about this.
Sure.
So you, in the last few years, have, and I think you probably do in this most of your career, I've just really noticed it, you tour like a madwoman. Like, I've seen you go to Europe, there was like a year or two there that I thought, oh, you were never home in the States. You were like on the road, and you were like, it was full on, and I could see you were jumping around in all these great places. So I have a couple questions around that. First of all, is that, I think that's part of also the work. That's what my assumption is that preparation and the gigs. So here's the question I've really been thinking. Is that exhilarating, all those stops? Like, do you thrive off that? Or is it exhausting as well?
Well, it's both, of course. But I would say it's much more exhilarating, than exhausting. I mean, exhaustion comes with the territory anyway. But I really do try to, get my rest on the road. I think, you have to, when you put yourself out there, certainly in my career, you have to be held accountable for something.
Mm-hmm.
And when you book shows and people are paying $15-20 or 20 euros or whatever to come see you, it better be freaking good. I mean, because typically all my shows on the road are solo acoustic. There are shows like, for instance, in the Czech Republic, and some shows in the UK where I do have bands out there that come and play with me.
Okay.
But the show revolves around me and my music and what I'm performing and how I'm performing it. And, that's a lot of money for somebody to spend on a ticket, 90 minutes of their evening. So I just really, take that very serious. I think about if it was me in the audience, and that just really keeps me on my toes. And I also have so much experience touring with some of these amazing artists that I had, in my background, that I learned a lot about what it takes to put together a great show. Just from a showmanship view, perspective, or whatever you want to say. I learned a lot looking at Lindsey and seeing how he prepared the band for a show. I mean, he literally put a whole show together, from the set list, to the banter in between the songs, to I'm going to go turn to you and jam with you during this section, and it was the same thing every night, because it's somewhat scripted. Of course, there were a lot of improvised things too that happen on stage, but it has to be somewhat scripted, like you would see a play, because there's so many people involved. You have a lighting person and a sound man,
sure,
band, and all that. I just got used to how that worked. And one of the tours we did was opening for Tina Turner, which was like,
I didn't know that.
Well, Lindsey opened for Tina Turner. Our band with Lindsey opened for Tina Turner for like 6 weeks all across Canada and the parts of upper East United States. And now, if you're talking about the queen of a performer, then you're talking about Tina Turner, because she's just amazing. And I took every opportunity to watch her, and even though it was the same show every night,
sure,
she did not miss a beat. I mean, she did not miss a beat. She was on it. Her band was on it. Her dancers were like 3 times younger than her, and they couldn't barely keep up with her. But
That's awesome. I love that.
so that gave me a really good insight into how I needed to make my shows as well as I could without having, of course, all that tour budget and stuff to work with, and just being myself and being genuine on stage and sharing my passion. And the passion part really goes over well in Europe, and that's why I do so much touring over there. They really relate to that.
Mm.
So I think when you're held accountable for your work like that, it better be good. So you're constantly on your feet, trying to make your show interesting, do some new things. Because as you can see from my schedule, I return pretty much every summer, and sometimes I return to the same venues, and the same people may come again. So, I don't want them to see the exact same show again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I change it up and do what I can. I'm always trying to do new things in my performances, trying out new sounds and making the arrangements of the song slightly different than the record, maybe bringing up a guest performer. Who knows? Just different things.
Well, speaking of different things, because it made me think a little bit, because you don't focus on this, but I know you've done some work. I'm speaking specifically around, you've done, some of your music has been up in some TV, but you've also done like a soundtrack for a short film.
Yes.
So I start to think about, when I started to look at all this stuff, because I didn't realize about the short film. That was new for me. I knew there were some things like back in the day, like in Felicity and things like that. I remember actually hearing it back in the day. So
okay, cool.
I admittedly used to watch that. So
well, the royalties have gone down quite a bit since then. But yeah.
Probably, right? So here's my question. I started to wonder, and this is leading into the live stage. Everybody's a little bit different, but I think most musicians I've talked to, they really thrive on the live show. You do work in different spaces. Obviously, you're recording the albums, and then you'll do a tour probably to support that, I would imagine. And then if you're doing more tours in the summer in Europe, and maybe there's even more opportunities to do movies or TVs. Do you have a love or a passion that you're really driven toward, or do you like to mix it up?
Oh, it's for sure playing live. I mean, at heart, I'm definitely a performer.
Yeah. Is that the energy? Is that not just...
Yeah, it's actually the exchange of energy. I never think of myself as being above the audience. If anything, I think the audience is above me. Mm-hmm. They're the ones paying. So they're employing me to give them entertainment. So I love meeting new people. It's just so many interesting people that I've met in all over the world. And I love touching people if I can in a personal way. Yeah. And there have been people that have come up and told me, very personal stories about my songs, and I'm just like, wow, it's an honor, that whatever it is that my song helped you get through, or it made you feel better, or whatever it was, because I know that's how it was for me when I listened to songs. Sure. It takes you back to a time, and I just get so much joy out of seeing people smile and laugh and get into the music. And I just think there's something about music that is so, it's so, what's the word? It's in our DNA, it's just like we've been hearing, playing, listening to music ever since the dawn of mankind, and I realize, there are painters and, cave portraits and things like that. We've been doing that too, but there's something about sound and there's been a lot of studies on it, in regards to what it does to our brain, whether you're listening to it or playing it. And I just love that feeling, that energy. And I love preparing a show together. It's exciting. And yeah, what else can I say? I love all these other things I get to do as well. But I would say playing live, going on tour is my number one fave.
And I completely agree about the music. It's almost like it's part of my soul. It's almost transcends everything. It's an emotion. It's almost tangible. I agree. That's probably the big love of my life.
there's something when you hear a song or a piece of music that it doesn't only hit your ears. It's like maybe there's a smell during that time.
Yeah.
And that smell comes back when you hear that song, or a very intense memory may come back when you hear that song. There's all these things that it triggers. That's really fascinating to me about music, and I love that. It's so does get in your soul, like you said, gets in there so deeply.
It's so interesting. I agree, and it's I think it ranges from every genre of music as well. I had this conversation a while ago with a friend. There was a new show, not so new anymore. It came out a couple months, maybe 3 months ago on Netflix, called Stranger Things. So it was all the rage, and it was this,
I love that show.
So you know what I'm talking
the
about.
Series. I watched it all.
Oh, yeah. So that, it's obviously very nostalgic, and the two brothers that directed that and created that show, they really studied the 80s well. Like I'm watching this and I was like, exactly.
I know they did.
I was that nerdy kid. I had that Blondie poster, things like that, and and it was interesting is the music, the intro music, also that synth music was spot on.
Yeah, it was.
And I remember going to SoundCloud and I typed something in about it, and I found it was like within a week and a half, Janet, like it was like not even much time, people had already created inspired by and covers of that. I'd found like 15 of them.
Wow, yeah.
And it was because of this nostalgic connection that they're like, oh, it just brings me back. And I thought, now that is the power of music. And it was so popular that then Netflix released 2 soundtracks for it, like, a month later. But I just thought that sings to the point of what you're talking about, this wow, it connects us everywhere, and it's
absolutely,
it's a gift actually, really, for as you a performer, because you're bringing something to so many of us.
Well, I'm happy to bring it to you, but if you guys weren't there in the audience, or you weren't listening to the music, getting it online, whatever it is, we wouldn't have anybody to go to.
Yeah.
So and some of these venues are disappearing, unfortunately. It's a weird mix. I mean, I think if you really want to go see a band live, you're going to go see them. But some of the smaller venues are disappearing. A lot of people are just going on YouTube and watching it on YouTube. And that's a little disappointing for us live performers.
I was going to ask you about just in the last, 5 to 10 years, it's really changed with this music, even producing, releasing music. I interviewed, there's a musician who's down in Long Beach. He goes by the band name of Color Theory.
Wow.
And he talked about, which I thought was really interesting, he goes, people just don't release as albums formats as much as they used to. Like they do, but it's like we're almost being forced into what's next, and it's a single thing. And he's like,
yes.
He's like, but then you lose the story, or lose different elements. He's like, and he talked about so now with YouTube, he found that he had to record certain things now. Now he's recording some of the piano track he's doing to show what he's doing. Do you find that, and not everybody's like this, I don't want to say that's true, but with this, boost of video and SoundClouds and things like this, is there a positive at all there for more, the work that you're doing? Do you find that you can reach people differently, or is it, I'm just wondering how it affects you.
Well, I think there's a positive to the whole internet thing in general for musicians who never got a record deal, a big record deal, where, you can put out your own stuff and get that exposure. I certainly wouldn't be in the position I am to tour and go and play all these places had it not been for the internet. And YouTube is important because people who want to book you, for instance, they will go, first thing you do, they want to see a live video of you. And it's so easy now. Back in the old day, you'd have to send a VHS tape, or something. I mean, so listen, I mean, there are good things and bad things about it. Yeah, I think, it's changing again now, no more CDs. It's, all online. That said, we went ahead and produced, duplicated these CDs, For me, my crowd, and certainly in Europe still, they want the CD. They want that in hand. They want you to sign it. They want you to take a picture with them.
I get that. I love the tangible, physical part of it.
I do too. I mean, you and I came from, the LP days, didn't we?
Oh, I was just going to ask because, that's really come back to vinyl.
Yes.
Has that affected you in any way? Like,
No, I mean, every once in a while I'll get, do you have this on vinyl? But I haven't been prompted to
do it.
Yeah, to do it. I think it's kind of anything goes now. Listen, if you want to release a single, release it. I mean, if you want to do a whole record, a collection of songs, but you don't want to put it on a CD, you can still release it on iTunes as a collection.
Sure.
And then people still can buy one or two songs. I mean, yeah, back in the day, we would have to buy the whole record, wouldn't we? Mm-hmm. Even if we only liked one song, So I think, you have to just go with it. If you're an artist in any way and you're trying to make a living at it, okay, you have to go with what's happening. You have to change with the new things that are happening within your world. Yeah. If you don't change, it's going to be very hard for you to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I makes sense. You have to adapt.
So my record, it's on SoundCloud. It's on my website. Go listen to it. If you're not going to buy it, but you just want to listen to it while you're at work on your computer, fine. So that's the way it is now. But if you want to see me live, you got to buy a ticket.
Yeah, absolutely. And nothing replaces a live experience, truly. I mean, it's so different to be in the room. It's funny because when I first saw you, like I said, I saw you originally in that little small, shop and it was just you. But then I saw you a few years later and I want to say, I think it was the Mint I saw you at in LA.
And yeah, I was playing there a lot back.
Yeah, and it was back with a full band. And so I went from acoustic you to a full band. I was like, who is this rock star? Like, because it was so different. And so live was really good.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I've kind of incorporated both now, kind of the acoustic and the electric, depending on, the gig. But yeah, so as far as the answer to the internet thing, I just think you just have to go with it and keep aware of all the new stuff that's happening out there. There's some awesome things too that can really help musicians.
I agree. And if anything, if YouTube and stuff, it's great marketing too. If that, you're not anywhere near somebody, or you can reach an audience differently.
Absolutely. What I don't like is though, if it becomes a thing where, you are touring and, you're trying to get your friend to come see me, right? You're coming and like you ask your friend, oh, I saw her on YouTube already. I don't need to see her. Oh. So that, that I think happens. So, I try to tell people at my shows, listen, you can videotape, but I prefer you don't put it on YouTube. Show your friends and stuff. But, I have videos up there, I can't control everything, but I still want, the element of surprise, when you come see me.
Sure.
You're giving away all my things.
You're giving away the secrets, exactly.
Yeah, so that's something that's does bother me a little bit, and I do think the royalties should be higher, the streaming royalties and the royalties from all of these companies, Pandora, iTunes. I mean, we get so little per 99 cents. It's just not very fair. And I think that the artists that are on major labels, they cut a different deal.
Sure, they have the clout to do that.
That's right. So their artists get paid a little more. And listen, I understand that's how the business is, but I think there are some major artists out there trying to change that. And I hope it will change. We do deserve, the same amount or close to the same amount. It's music, and it's still, people can buy it or not buy it, but if they buy it, we should be paid, accordingly.
I think you have a great point there too. It makes me think about anybody who, let's say somebody who wants to start, or they want to be a musician. Maybe they're younger, it could be any age, I guess, but they're just get into it. Because I think about what you just said. It's a tough industry, first of all, to get into and to make a living at it, and like royalties, all these different things. Would you have any advice to give someone who's wanting to become a musician or just starting out?
Yeah, don't become one.
You're not the first musician that has actually said that to me.
No, I get that question asked to me a lot, especially from various guitar students. Listen, I think nowadays you have to do everything if you're going to be a musician. My job isn't just playing music. I do the PR, I book the travel, I book a lot of the gigs, except for the ones in Europe. I have an agent. I'm booking the rental car, I'm booking the hotels, I'm, sending out for reviews for the CD. I'm posting on social media. I am literally in front of my computer, 7 to 8 hours a day if I'm not doing a session or a teaching session or a recording session. And then by the 8th hour, I eat dinner and then I start playing for me, whatever it is I need to do. If I need to run over something, practice, or I'm working on a new song or whatever it is. So we're talking about, 14 to 15 hour days.
Yeah. I think that's a reality, though. I love that you just said all that. I mean,
it's not all work and no play, but if you decide to get into this and you're serious about it, you have to be aware that there are all these other jobs that come along with it. And on top of that, you better be good. I mean, you better have good songs, decent songs. You better be able to put on a good show. You got to get it together.
Well, it's like you said earlier, be prepared. Like, be the turtle.
I would just tell people that, you got to be as pro as you can. You got to show up on time. You got to be prepared. You got to, all these things. And you got to know that your job is going to incorporate a lot of things, especially if you're trying to pay your rent and bills, So that's why if I get offered a job teaching, an actress, in a Quentin Tarantino film, which I did last year, and I have to take a couple months off of my solo career to do that, I do it.
Yeah.
And if I get offered to, write a song for a soap opera, and it's they're paying me, I'm going to do that too. So I'm going to know how to do all these things. I was once hired to do a flamenco guitar session, and I'm a pretty good guitar player, but I don't know, flamenco guitar, the way that I was thinking he wanted it. So I just, this is another thing I tell people, say yes to everything and figure it out later.
But that's true. It really is.
I said, yes, great. I'd love to do the gig. I went to Guitar Center. I bought the best nylon Spanish guitar I could find because I knew I could return it in 30 days. I don't tell Guitar Center that. And I studied up on some different scales of Spanish descent and some different techniques real fast. And I did the session. And you got paid, and then I returned the guitar.
Is that also an example of, like how I was talking about these different opportunities, like even just the one that you just talked about, like the Quentin Tarantino film? I think that was The Hateful Eight.
Yeah, The Hateful Eight, yeah.
Yeah. So are those also good examples of like clearly you're doing all these different things, but are also like a little bit of fun because you get to mix it up?
Well, yeah. That was pretty fun. And right after that, I was hired to play in a band in a musical out here at the Kirk Douglas Theater.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was called Girlfriend, and it was an all-girl band, and the band was featured quite a bit in the play. We were actually on stage with the actors. And, I wasn't sure I wanted to take that because when you do a play like that, that it's like 7 days a week, 2 shows a day or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot. But I said yes to it because I had really never done that before. And I wanted to have that experience. And so, again, I said yes. I didn't book any gigs. And I just, for a couple months, that's what I did.
Because I completely forgot to ask about this earlier because we moved around a little bit, but this made me now think about your earlier band before you went solo. I we can't end this interview without talking about that first band you were in, Precious Metal, the all-female rock band.
Yeah.
Maybe just give me a little glimpse of that too, because I actually didn't know about that until I started researching. So I'd love to know a little bit more about, because you guys you got signed a couple times.
Yeah, we got signed.
And you were in high school, maybe?
I was, 16 when I got in the band.
So, that's awesome. This is like a movie, that kind of moment.
I know.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about, like, even just who the band was, what you guys ended up doing.
You know, I was in a lot of different bands up to then, just garage bands and Nick bands, and they were all guys. And to their credit, you know, they were all cool, and it was good and everything. But I just was like, I was kind of getting sick of it, and I wanted something different. And you know, the Go-Go's and the Bangles had just kind of popped out there, and I was like, oh, cool, you know. And I knew about the Runaways, and I thought, you know, I should try to see if I can get an all-girl band. And again, I took to the, you know, it wasn't Craigslist back then. I think it was the Recycler.
I think
remember that newspaper, Christopher?
I think I want to say, does it still exist?
I think it does. Recycler.com.
Yeah.
And I literally looked at, I'm so old school, it's really like embarrassing. I looked at the ad, I found an ad that was looking for a lead guitar player for an all-girl band. And it was in the valley where I lived, and I had a car, and I went to the audition, and you know, the girl who was putting it together with this producer in place, and the producer had some credits and was somewhat reputable. And, you know, I showed up with my leather jacket and whatever, you know, and she's like, well, you look the part, let's see if you can play, you know. So, you know, I was pretty good back then. I mean, I was, you know, Randy had just passed away, but I had pretty good chops for a 16-year-old girl. And so I got the gig, and, you know, it wasn't soon after that. I mean, literally, our first gig was at my high school during lunch.
What a great beginning.
Right?
That's awesome.
That was in 12th grade. And then, you know, we did a couple gigs at the high school. Then we started playing certain clubs around LA. And, you know, I was underage. I had to stay in my car after sound check. I could only go in when we were on stage. And then when the gig ended, I had to go home, you know. So that was me, you know, sitting in Sunset Boulevard in my car.
What a memory.
Yeah, that was funny. And, you know, at 18, I went into UCLA. I was studying theater arts because I had done a little bit of acting as a young girl. And I decided to leave because we got signed. We got signed to Polygram, Polygram Mercury, which back then was a very big label. And it was a very big deal. There was a lot of money. And, you know, we got some good, you know, hefty advances. And like the 80s, you know, it's like the way it was back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, that turned into a lot of different things. But and that's a whole other story. But I spent 6 years in that band, and I really cut my teeth, I think, on the road in that band, on seeing what it was like, the exhaustion factor, the entertainment factor, the partying factor, you know. Even though I really wasn't that big of a partier, I was very serious and, you know, probably the first one to sleep after the show. Boring as hell on the road. But, yeah, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about recording, about writing songs. I mean, that was really the first professional band that I was in that, you know, we had to be held accountable for by a label that was putting money into us and producers that were working with us and so forth, you know. So it was a very good experience and stepping stone for me to lead into yet a higher level of my career in playing with people like Lindsey, Buckingham, and being hired for a gig like that.
Do you even think like that kind of experience being in a band like that with producers and a label, did that really, I would think, like you said, you were cutting your teeth on this, but it almost gave you like everything you needed to know to go solo. So you had the knowledge and experience of what you actually could do on your own.
I actually didn't go solo until after the Lindsey gig.
Oh, okay. That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I was still insecure about that. I looked at myself really as a lead guitar player and a partner to whoever was the lead singer. And I felt that way even in Lindsey's band. It wasn't until the gig with Lindsey sort of ended and we started exchanging songs. He would send me some tapes. I would send him some stuff, and he was really mentoring me, and he encouraged me, Janet, you can do this, work more on your singing, you've got some good song, you come up with some good songwriting ideas. And it wasn't really until then that I had the balls to go do that. And I clearly remember my very first solo show. Okay. First of all, my first solo appearance was at an open mic at the Cat and Fiddle. Okay. So those of us who live or know Hollywood, that was a very popular bar. And I had to have a shot of tequila before going up and doing just an open mic. Okay. My own one song. Then my very first show, where it was only me, no band, just me on acoustic, me carrying the whole show, was at Genghis Cohen. And,
yeah.
Just to save you of the imagery, let's just say, I was in the bathroom for quite a long time before I got on stage.
That's all got to be normal, though. I mean, everybody must be going through that sort of stuff when you first start out.
I was so nervous, and I was surprised at myself, because generally I don't get nervous. And I had played in front of thousands and thousands of people with these celebrity artists, and I had had all this experience, but it really came down to just me, and it was packed, as packed as a small venue like that can be.
Yeah.
But so again, I just jumped into it, and it ended up being, a really great show, and I was, really, really happy with myself. But had I not had all those experiences, for sure, on the road with Precious Metal, learning how to write songs, learning how to sing backgrounds, then with Lindsey, learning how to put a show together and really apply my guitar skills and my songwriting skills and my singing skills to a much higher professional level, that turned me into the solo artist I am now.
Yeah, so smart. And I love that you're able to learn from others, because that's like, you've taken it to the degree, like, this is professionalism, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Well, the last question we always ask is, when people want to follow along and find you online, what are the best places to listen to your music or to see what you're up to, your tour dates?
Well, definitely my website, which I try to, update, weekly, which is janetrobin.com, and it's JANETROBIN.com. And yes, that is my real last name. I'm pretty much all over the internet. But if they want to see some videos, of course they can go to YouTube. But there are videos on my website as well. My new record's up there. String Revolution. We have our own website. It's thestringrevolution.com, and our new record is up there. Everything you can buy, by mail order. If you want me to personally sign it, that's the only way you can get it. Otherwise, if you want to buy it online, you have to go to, iTunes and the various places, because they're also online as well.
Sure. Great. So, well, I'll list all of that in the show notes here, and we'll put it on our website as well, and we'll make it really easy to get to anywhere they want to go.
Awesome.
This is awesome. I have to say, just thank you so much. We talked even normally a little bit longer than I normally do, just because I was so curious about your experiences. I think you have a lot of just great experiences to share.
Stories, Christopher. I got some stories. I know. I hope I didn't bore you. I hope.
My gosh, not. Okay. No, I think informative and just unique. It's just, I like that you talked about it, because here's the truth: you're living this. It's not like you said, a lot of people are just talking. You've actually taken the action. You've lived it. There's peaks and valleys to all of this. And you know what it's really like out there.
I do. Yeah, I do. I'm in it right now.
That's awesome. Well, I know we had talked a little earlier, too, about maybe even wrapping up the show with maybe just a little bit of instrumental, if that's something you still are game for.
Sure, yeah. A little live piece. You want to do that right now?
Sure.
Okay, let's see what I got here. Can you hear that okay?
Yes.
So this instrumental is actually from a previous record. I couldn't come up with a title, so I just called it JR Guitar.
That's awesome.
It's a little self-involved, isn't it? I'll just play, you don't want the whole thing, right? Just part of it or whatever?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, amazing. That was amazing.
There you go.
I have to tell you, like, not only I was like, oh, people are going to love this. I'm sitting here, I'm like, I have a live free concert.
Who said it was free, Christopher?
Really? Just please swipe your card.
Yeah, exactly.
Janet, seriously, I can't thank you enough. I really do think our listeners are really going to enjoy this. And it's been such a pleasure to get to know you a little bit more and more about your background.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be on your program. I loved it.
Thank you for listening to the show this week. What'd you think? Great story? Any new ideas? If you're new to the show, subscribe to receive a new episode each week automatically. And if you love the show and you want to help us out, go tell a friend about it. Then go write us a quick review on iTunes. Both of these favors really help us get the word out. If you want to follow along with me and see behind the scenes fun and more, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at @MeChristopher. That's MECHRISTOPHER. To get even more inspiration and updates, follow Accidental Information on Instagram and Facebook at Accidental Information, and on Twitter at Accidental Info. We also post original articles about following your passions and getting creative, and more information about each episode at accidentalinformation.com. Thanks for joining me this week. Now let's keep chatting online, and then I will talk to you again next week.